belong to the streets, but the streets belong to me. It's like home to me.
Alright guys, it's a big day, Monday morning on the way to boxing. I have a super packed schedule, so between the day I'm just gonna stop and I want to share with you really just the three most important pillars that have gotten me to where I am today. And most importantly, at that stage where you're trying to get to $10,000 or $20,000 a month. But first, let me get this workout in and we'll talk after.
Yeah, I've just said I had to move a few things. I could do 10 to 1. Stab down there. Good. And again. Yeah. Sit back a little bit more on the way. There. That's where you want. Then you can pick your shots. You can decide, there you go. And then you set you up. Boom. Exactly. Again. 1, 2.
You see, there's really one trait that everyone who fails in life has in common. Let me go ahead and light this up. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, I'm super into my candles. This one right here is one of my favorites, Tobacco Toscano. This store, I was actually in Rome for a few days, so De Santa Maria Novella. Probably butchered that name. I've had these candles before, but I never went into their store. Stores all around the world, but the one in Rome was very nice. And for those of you guys who don't know, this right here is an electric candle lighter. So rechargeable, so any of you guys who are into your candles, definitely go ahead and pick one of those up. But anyways, as I was saying, it's really not that they didn't try hard enough or that they didn't have talent or a high enough IQ. Instead, they all suffered from this one weird issue, something that I like to call the unicorn complex. And really, to explain what that is, I need to tell you a story. You see, right now there is $1 billion company between your legs. And no, I'm not actually joking. It's called YKK. Like, if you've actually looked at the zippers of any of your pants, I'm actually wearing one right now. It's got YKK on it. It's a little logo that you're gonna find on most zippers. You see, YKK manufactures more than 50% of the zippers in the world. So half of every single pant, every single jacket, every single backpack in the world has a YKK zipper. And that is billions and billions of dollars being made from something as boring as a zipper. But here's the thing, did you ever think to start a zipper company? Well, if you're like most people, probably not. That wasn't your childhood aspirations or dreams. But let's think for a second about all the boring things that we interact with on a daily basis that people make fortunes off of. You've got boxes, you've got hangers, you've got chairs. And then if you want to think about services, you've got roofing, you've got cleaning, you've got waste management, you have staffing agencies. Do you know how many businesses out there need to hire people? All of them. And you know how most of them do it? Most businesses out there do it through staffing agencies. So all of these boring industries move billions of dollars daily. Yet, I bet you've never thought about selling boxes or hangers, getting into waste management, or starting a staffing agency. Now, why is that? Because you suffer from what I call the unicorn complex. You think you need to come up with this $1 billion unicorn idea that no one has ever heard of before in order to be successful. And the problem is, that idea never comes. Weeks turn into months and you stay stuck trying to chase this revolutionary new idea, and that stops you from seeing the biggest secret that's hidden right in front of your nose. And that is, you don't need to invent the next Google or the next Uber. There is an ocean of opportunity in these simple, boring business models that have been tried and tested by thousands of people who became successful with them. But instead, you're too busy chasing the next big industry to see that. You know, it's kind of like trying to find the perfect diamond while you're sitting in a gold mine. Listen, what you need to understand is this. In this world, there are really two types of people. The ones who fail for their entire lifetimes and the ones who become successful. And the individuals that fail have this blind obsession with coming up with the next $1 billion revolutionary business, and instead they ignore the less sexy business models that have been proven to work. And by the way, a lot of times those less sexy businesses end up making more money in the long run. The individuals who succeed, they do what is practical. They choose business models that are often extremely boring, but they are proven to work by thousands of others who became successful with that business model before them. So listen, unless you want to fail, and fail a lot, for years, maybe even decades, in order to become successful, trust me, you don't want to be a trailblazer and depend on coming up with this revolutionary idea in order to become successful. Instead, you want to have the highest likelihood of actually becoming successful and do so while you're still young, so that way you can actually enjoy your wealth. And to be honest, the best way to do this is with a boring business that's been proven to work. And that is how 90% of the successful people in the world actually became that way. You can take me as an example. Listen, I only started venturing into less boring businesses many years after starting my first business and making lots of money with it. And what was that first business? An agency. Literally one of the most boring businesses to exist. And by the way, I know that a lot of you guys glorify it because you see the money and the success that it brought me early in my career. And by the way, that's very understandable, but I guarantee you that if I were making minimum wage with my agency, no one would think it's cool. The case is though, that it does make money and it simply works. And it has been a proven model for countless years. Now, by the way, you don't need to pick that as your first business. You can pick whatever you want as long as you understand our first secret, which is chasing a $1 billion idea is just gonna leave you broke. Starting a boring business will give you the highest chances of success with the lowest risk associated to it. Now, with that little rant over, I need to get to some work, but I'll chat with you guys later in the day.
Bro, I heard you listen to it in the shower. This guy's a clown.
I'm going to Laura Piano. Well, we're going to Cipriani first, because, you know, anytime you're in Mall of Emirates, you gotta go Cipriani. Mandatory.
You're such a white girl, bro. I think it looks good. I think it suits the brand that, like...
All right, so we're about halfway through the workday. I have a quick 30-minute break, so I'm gonna enjoy a nice cigarillo. But before that, I really wanted to talk to you guys about the second secret, and this is something that I personally experienced firsthand. And to be honest, it was really one of the hardest lessons that I learned when I first started experiencing some level of success. And to be honest, for this one, I'm actually gonna have to be a little bit vulnerable with you guys and take you back to a time when, to be honest, I thought I had it all figured out. You see, this must have been around, what, 4 or 5 years ago? I was making, you know, very good money. My business was growing and everything was going great. At least that's what it looked like from the outside. But to understand this, we need to take it even further back to my roots. Now, a lot of you guys may already know my story. Listen, it's a very typical story. Single mom, dad wasn't around, you know, watching her struggle and go to work and basically do everything just for me. It was tough, so I built my businesses. I dropped out of school to support me and my mom, and I didn't have a traditional childhood. I had to focus, I had to hustle, I couldn't afford to make mistakes. And there was a point in my life where if I lost a client, if I messed up on a project, it could all come crashing down. So I worked like a madman because I thought that was the only way to make sure that nothing would go wrong. And for a while, it worked. I was making more money than I ever thought possible. My business was growing faster than I could ever imagine, but without even realizing it, I was actually creating a massive trap for myself. Just like a tidal wave that I was warned about, but I didn't make a big deal out of, I took my eyes off of the shore, and before I realized that the water was at my feet and had already washed the beach, it got so bad that for 2 to 3 weeks in a row, I started waking up in the middle of the night with this crippling anxiety hitting me like a ton of bricks, my heart pounding, my mind racing, and that happened every single night. And I can't really put it into words, but I got into this very, very, very dark mind space where I almost felt like I didn't know who I was anymore.
I just, like over the past 2-3 weeks, I just keep waking up with this crippling anxiety, and I just don't feel like myself.
And then one night I just snapped and I actually ended up buzzing my hair for the first time in my life, and I had to lock myself away from any contact with the outside world for months on end to try to figure out what was happening. To be honest, I didn't really talk to anyone, I didn't see anyone. I just stayed isolated, trying to figure out where I went wrong. I mean, how could it be? How could I accomplish everything I wanted, get me and my mom out of the situation that we were in, and still be living through one of the worst periods in my entire life? Well, it was during this long period of solitude and self-reflection, of forcing myself to look in the mirror every single day and really assess what was wrong, that I came to a realization. All this time, I thought I was chasing freedom, but really, I was chasing money. The very thing that was supposed to set me free is what ended up imprisoning me. To be honest, money didn't bring any happiness in my life. What it did instead was help me build a prison for myself. An expensive one, yes, but still a prison. And this experience taught me that money was nothing if it didn't come with freedom. Now, luckily, I learned this lesson fast enough and at a young age. The problem was, I wasn't an isolated case living through this hell. This was something that most entrepreneurs struggle with, and most never figure it out. They keep chasing more and more money, thinking that the next paycheck, the next client, the next promotion will finally bring them the happiness that they've been looking for, without realizing that all they're doing is digging their own graves. And I've seen it happen with so many of my friends. I've seen it happen with people I look up to. They end up trading their freedom for money. They become slaves to their businesses, slaves to their clients, slaves to the very thing that was supposed to set them free. And the worst part, just like an addict, they think if they can just make a little bit more, if they just push a little harder, that everything will get better. Well, I'm sorry to say, spoiler alert, it doesn't. The more they chase, the more they trap themselves. And it's by acting like that that you end up discovering our second secret from firsthand experience. And that secret is, there is nothing more miserable than being rich but not free.
Oi, yeah. I communicate via gully flows. I don't wanna skate, I'll get a bloody nose. Annabella Kate, so I hit the blades.
So the first secret was a word of warning. The second secret was the one that changed my life. And the third secret is the one that's going to change yours. And in order for you to understand, we really need to go back to that very same dark moment that I was living through. When I was going through the darkest period in my life, when I was locked away, really just trying to figure out what went wrong. And I asked myself the question, when was I truly happy? The happiest that I've ever been. You know, if I were to be truly honest with myself, and doing this exercise, I realized that the happiest that I ever was when I was making about $10,000 a month. And you see, it wasn't because of the money itself, but rather because of the freedom that that life and work setting provided me with. Due to the nature of my own business, I could work from anywhere, and I had the money to do pretty much whatever I wanted. Enough to send my mom some money every month, enough to take my best friend to Paris, enough to take time off whenever I felt like it, and most importantly, I never again had to do as I was told. I didn't need to follow someone else's orders because for the first time, I was truly in control of my own life. And that's what hitting that $10,000 a month figure really represented to me. And somewhere along the way, I lost that control. I lost that life setting that I created for myself. And the reason I'm telling you this is not to discourage you from becoming a millionaire or buying your dream car. You should aim to do all that stuff. By all means, I want you to do that. But what I want you to understand is this. Most people have a distorted perception of reality. They think that you need millions of dollars in your bank account to become truly free, reclaim control of your life, and live an epic lifestyle. While the reality is you don't need that. Today, it's much more about how you make your money than how much money you make. So let me give you an example to try to illustrate this point. Take an investment banker who's making $500,000 a year. And just so you know, that's on the higher end of a director or vice president level roles. When you're first starting out in your first few years, it's much below that. On the other hand, let's take a small business owner with all of his operations streamlined and outsourced, and he's making $100,000 a year. And by the way, that's less than the $10,000 number that I mentioned previously. So it's a very realistic figure. Now, if I was to ask you who's richer, what would your answer be? Obviously, the investment banker. If we're just looking financially, he's 5 times richer than the online business owner. Now, it's once time is introduced in this equation that the whole narrative starts to change. Let's say the investment banker works an average 80 hours a week, which is very, very typical for that role. And let's say our second guy works 10 hours a week on his business. Again, I was making way more than $100,000, working only 4 hours a week on my agency once I got it up and running. So if you calculate their relative income, you're gonna see that the relative income for an investment banker is $120 an hour. While for the guy with a small online business, it's $190 an hour. But that's not even the most important point, because let's say the investment banker manages to save up and retire in his early 50s. I mean, why is he even doing that in the first place? So that way he can move to some paradise city and live a chill lifestyle by the beach. Well, if that's the case, the guy who owns a small online business doesn't need to wait until retirement. He can live that lifestyle right now. He can run his business from a paradise city and live that same chill lifestyle by the beach. He doesn't have to wait until retirement. And most importantly, he doesn't need to live frugally and penny pinch along the way. He can actually enjoy the experiences his money can provide him while he's still young, and that's so important. Plus, another thing to mention is the investment banker is probably going to work in a place like New York and be bound to that city. They're going to be stuck. He's going to have to pay rent there. If he wants to go out for a fancy dinner with his wife, he's going to pay hundreds of dollars. His life cost in general is going to be very, very expensive. While at the same time, the guy with a small business can choose any city in the world to live in, where his lifestyle is going to cost a fraction of that. His rent will probably be 10% of the rent of the guy in New York for the exact same quality of apartment. An incredible night out is going to cost him $80, whereas the guy in New York is going to cost him $400. And this is how we get to the third and final secret, which is you don't need to be a millionaire to be free. To live a lifestyle that most people work their entire lives for, you can do it with as little as $10,000 a month. You don't need to grind away for decades to live the life that you want, as long as you choose the right way to do it. Because what matters is how you make your money, not how much that you make. So ladies and gentlemen, hopefully that's kind of just set your mindset straight as to the journey ahead and understanding that freedom in your dream life is a lot closer than you could ever imagine. And I know for a lot of you guys, you think that you have to be multi-millionaires and achieve all this and that and build a unicorn billion-dollar business in order to be free. And it saddens me that so many people go down that route only to realize that it makes them miserable and they've literally built their own prison. So hopefully this video just kind of sets your mind straight and gives you a motivation to know that you're a lot closer than you could ever imagine. So on that note, I'm gonna start to turn up the temperature in here, get a little sweat on, shower, and then get some good night's rest. So as always, I'm watching from afar and I'm rooting for you.